What are the common HRIS analyst interview questions you need to know, and also the answers to them so you can ensure that you go ahead and land your HRIS analyst job that you want? And my name is Josh. I'm the founder of HR University. And in this lesson, we're going to go ahead and dive into just that and more. And before we do that, though, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And that way you don't miss any of our lessons on how to become a great HR professional. Now let's go ahead and jump in. So first, we'll explore the question categories an interviewer might ask for an HRIS analyst job, then go from there. The HRIS analyst role is more technical than the typical HR role. And recruiters ask analytical questions to assess systematic and logical reasoning skills. Besides analytical, expect strategic questions as well. The most common question categories in an HRIS analyst interview are technical questions to test your technical HR skills, HR-related questions to test your basic HR knowledge, and behavioral questions to test how you act in certain situations. And first, we have analytical questions. You can expect analytical questions that test your data analysis knowledge. And here's a list of common questions a candidate faces in an HRIS analyst interview. It starts with, how do you analyze the employee and HR department's performance data? And how do you evaluate in HR operations and extract metrics? Tell us about a time when your analysis contributed to anticipating and solving a complex challenge. Now take your time when answering, how do you analyze the employee and HR department's performance data? Because there's a lot that goes in there. And there are many ways to approach this question. But remember that employee tracking is a number game. So that means recording performance, success rates, and failure rates. You want to make sure you talk about graphic rating scales, 360-degree feedback, and management of objectives, or MOB. And when analyzing performance for the HR department, however, there are additional steps. Mention assessing service delivery and measuring HR internal efficiency and effectiveness. And also talk about how the HR department must be efficient first before an organization can measure other data. And finally, the more techniques you know, the more suitable you are for the position. And speaking of HR operations, let's talk about how do you evaluate an HR operation and extract metrics. You want to stress the importance of extracting metrics and laying them out clearly. And the more detail-oriented you are, the easier you will spot any issues in the department. And when questioned about this process, emphasize your attention to microprocesses. And data is often overwhelming, so the better you are at extracting the most crucial data out of a large amount of information, the better. And the last question for the category is, tell us about a time when your analysis contributed to anticipating and solving a complex challenge. Here, attention to detail is crucial when dealing with complex processes. An interviewer will ask about an example of you overcoming an HR challenge. And here you want to draw from your experience. And don't be afraid to exhibit a unique approach to problem solving. If you show that you can anticipate and troubleshoot on the go, well, then you'll go ahead and be one step ahead of other candidates. Now, the second category here is strategic questions. Apart from analytical skills, an HRIS analyst must have good strategic skills. And the HRIS analyst extracts information from the employee and departmental evaluation data. And they must develop strategies that boost the department's growth while keeping the organization's long-term and short-term goals in mind. Now let's move on to some of the common strategic questions. So how do you use reports to develop growth strategies for your organization? And how do you learn a new HR system? Let's begin with, how do you use reports to develop growth strategies? Contrary to popular belief, HR is not just about hiring fresh talent and ensuring everyone gets their salary. This question is your opportunity to shine. Talk about your ability to define and set high-level goals. Also explain how you identify inputs and outputs, run comprehensive growth experiments, and validate them as you progress. And be aware that you also foster extreme accountability among your team members. And then make sure to conclude by giving a few real-life examples of how you've successfully done this in the past. And next, we have, how do you learn a new HR system? Learning a new HR system is a part of every HR job, even if you don't change positions for a while. You'll still experience an occasional overhaul. And make sure you emphasize your adaptability, quick learning skills, and the ability to adjust on the go. As an HRIS analyst, you're the one who will need to help everybody else get on board. And don't forget to mention a few strategies for dealing with employee resistance and general problems and challenges that come up. And the third category is technical questions. Almost all HRIS analyst tasks are technical. In an interview, you'll get more such questions than any others. And here are some common technical questions you'll face during the interview for this role. How do you extract the performance coefficient from an HR campaign? How do you resolve issues through an HCM system? So it's important to prepare well and keep in mind the technical skills for this role. And you can take inspiration from the above mentioned questions to understand what technical questions you can look forward to in an interview. And the first question is, how do you extract the performance coefficient from an HR campaign? Extracting the performance coefficient from an HR campaign is crucial for evaluating any attempt to attract new talent. And your role is to figure out the KPIs or key performance indicators. And KPIs include qualified candidates per opening, source quality, time to hire, cost per hire, interviews per hire, first-year turnover rate, and more. The more you know about each variable and the more you know how to improve them, the better. Now, the second question is, how do you resolve issues through an HCM system, so human capital management system? And issues arising in the HCM system and their potential solutions are technical aspects commonly addressed in initial rounds of interviews. Talk about your ability to cope with unexpected problems and solve them within the existing framework. And if this is a stumbling block, then make sure to brush up on your human capital management software knowledge. And if you have strong background in coding, this will be your time to talk about that at length. And next we have HR-related questions. Since HRIS analysts operate in an HR department, you must be familiar with the HR operations overall. For example, you should familiarize yourself with how a talent acquisition strategy works, as well as recruitment and how to analyze candidates' job applications. Although questions vary based on the job description and organizational preferences, you can still prepare well. Now let's go ahead and explore possible HR-associated questions here. So how do you train your staff on a new human resources system? And what do you know about employee benefits and satisfaction? And when asked, how do you train staff on a new human resources system, you must outline a clear and workable strategy. And there are a few basic steps you can consider here. First, ensure you are familiar with the software before teaching others about it. And second, figure out how long the training process can last. You want to establish realistic deadlines and set some training incentives, including a reward system, and make sure to pick the correct format, such as interactive demos or gamification, which can sometimes be equally important. You don't need to mention all these in an interview, but it is helpful if the interviewer asks you to elaborate and you have the ability to do so. And next we have what you know about employee benefits and satisfaction. You want to touch upon each of the core elements of employee satisfaction. And these core elements include compensation and benefits packages, including days off, maternity leave, and much more. And you also want to explain the managerial style that you employ and explain how your approach boosts certain KPIs like productivity, turnover, reputation, dedication, and overall employee well-being. Again, much like with other questions, practical examples will make a big difference. So if you have case studies, make sure to reference them and the results that you got from those case studies. And last here, we have behavioral questions. While technical and analytical skills are mandatory for an HRIS analyst role, behavioral skills are also required. And when you prepare for your interview, ensure to prepare behavioral questions related to the job description of the HRIS analyst position. And here's a look into what sort of behavioral questions you can expect. How do you handle unhappy employees? How do you stay focused in a challenging work environment? First, let's answer, how do you handle unhappy employees? The key to answering this question is to show your willingness to listen. Let the interviewer know you are receptive to criticism and can lend an ear to your team members. In this way, it'll be easier for you to define the root cause and figure out how to help. And you want to suggest a few potential solutions, including a change of pace, workload diversification, and a reevaluation of each employee's goals. And sometimes psychological counseling can also help, especially if the stress rates run high in the company. And people in high positions will often be particularly susceptible to having a high amount of stress. Finally, we have how do you stay focused in a challenging work environment? Your potential employer needs to know how you cope with pressure and stress. When asked about this topic, mention your most effective methods of unwinding, keeping your head level, and dealing with conflict. And the more self-care techniques you know, the better you will perform and help your team members perform. You don't need to shy away from odd or quirky ideas. You can go ahead and share them as long as they work and don't disrupt the workflow. And there we have it. That's all you need to know about the HRIS Analyst interview questions that you need to prepare for. If you feel like you have a better understanding of how to go into an interview and succeed in it when it comes to this position, make sure to go ahead and like the video and subscribe to our channel, and that way you can keep up to date with all of our lessons on how to become a great HR professional. And again, my name is Josh. I'm the founder of HR University, and I'll go ahead and see you in some of our other lessons. Cheers.